Hello, welcome to another episode of SPO Coffee Chats, where we bring in professionals in the industry to discuss everything in supply chain, career progression, internships, jobs, co-ops, and just general life advice. My name is El Estenal. I'm the VP of Student Development this spring 2021 and one of your co-hosts this season.
Hello, everyone. My name is William Messenger. I'm the Spring 21 VP of Alumni Relations, and I'm extremely excited to announce that we have Erum Kader here to speak with you guys. She is the ex-president of SPO and is working now at LyondellBasell. Erum, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you guys for having me. I'm excited.
Of course, we're really grateful to you for hopping on the show today. So if you could give us a little bit of background into your story, like what is your role, what company you're working for, and how you ended up at your current position.
Yeah, so I currently work at LyondellBasell, and I am an account specialist on the export side for polymers. Basically, what I do is from when the second the customer puts in the purchase order, as we call POs, till they get the container or the order, I handle everything in between. So a lot of talking to customers. All my containers go internationally. It's a lot of documentation stuff, talking to sales every day, a lot of troubleshooting. But I've been with the company now a year and a half. So it's been a while. I just started full time in May. But yeah, that's a little bit about what I do and where I work.
You were a supply chain major, obviously, at the Bauer College of Business. What about supply chain management drew you to the major and made you want to pursue a career in it?
Yeah, why I feel like I wanted to do supply chain. I think for everyone it's kind of hard to like pick a major, right? And you start looking at which major will get me a good job. So I kind of narrowed it down to like accounting, MIS, and supply chain. And then I was like, okay, now what am I actually interested in? I was like, I don't really want to sit behind my desk every day and be doing math, which kind of narrowed it down to MIS and supply chain for me. And then I joined SPO because I was like, I don't even know what supply chain is. I hadn't taken an entry level class, but I needed to decide my major because I was trying to plan my next 4 years. So joining SPO, I realized that supply chain is really diverse. So your day to day is different. The roles that you can have can be so different. You can go into procurement, you can go into being a buyer, sourcing, logistics. And as someone who likes change, I realize that's where I need to be. I don't want to be in one role for the rest of my life. I constantly want to be growing and troubleshooting and helping a company. And I really found that in supply chain.
Yeah, I think the wide diversity, as you said, of the different roles within supply chain and what makes everyone so excited about it. And you joined Bauer SPO. We know you're a former president and officer. Can you talk a little bit more about how you decided to take on that leadership position and what that looks like for you?
I remember going to my first ever meeting and being like, oh, wow, this organization seems so professional. And wow, like it's somewhere that I would love to, be a part of. And I remember meeting Dr. Wayhan and being so nervous. And I remember my first meeting, and then after that, I kind of told myself something. I was like, every single person in the Ring of Honor talked about being involved, and that's how they got to where they are today. So I kind of made a promise to myself. I was like, I'm going to be involved. I'm going to go to every meeting. I'm going to try to be in a committee because that seems like the right first step based on what everyone was kind of saying in that room that night. So I decided to join the PR committee and I loved it. It was a great way to kind of learn and also feel like you were kind of making an impact on the organization without being an officer. And then after that, a lot of the officers were like, you should run, you know how all the officers kind of encourage you
Of
when you're a
course.
committee member or even a member to join and kind of run as an officer. But that next semester I was actually taking stats and I was working part-time. So I was like, I don't think I could do all three at the same time. So I decided to run for the committee member of student development. So to me, that was kind of like the next step, helping an officer that's like a senior officer, right? And being more active in the event, maybe like doing a safety moment and stuff like that. So that was my next step. And then after that, I finally ran for the PR officer. And I think I ran against 5 other people. And I was like, okay, I'm not winning this. I was like, okay, all these people are super involved in SPO and I don't think I'm going to win. But I was really passionate about the position and I had a lot of ideas that I vocalized in my speech. And I guess that's what got me to be the officer. And then after that, I was president for 2 semesters, which is, I guess, considered a year. And so definitely that's kind of my story in SPO, but I always tell people this, it really shaped me into the person I am today. The organization and honestly my leadership positions. I wouldn't be where I am today without have being president, but also even just being a committee member. You learn so much.
Yeah, SPO is such an important, and that's what everyone keeps saying, in these podcasts, is that SPO really builds a foundation for you when you head into a professional career. And so it's cool that you just started your full-time job. And I'm wondering, in the time that you've been there, what are some things that you wish you would have known when you first started your career? We kind of talked about when you were in your undergraduate studies. So now, once you're in your professional full-time career, what is something that you wish someone would have told you that would have prepared you a little bit better?
So it's been 6 or 7 months now that I've been working full time. And obviously, it's so different because it's virtual. I think if I was in person, my advice might be different than what it is because I trained virtually.
Mhm.
I have been doing my entire role virtually. I haven't met a coworker in person or my supervisor, right? But I think the advice that I kind of would give is just because things are virtual right now doesn't mean that you can't make an impact. So still take the time to network like you would do in person and ask for different opportunities. Like you might not be in person, so your manager or supervisor might not actually see the work that you're doing or be able to recommend you for projects just because you're not having that in person dialogue. So don't be afraid to kind of ask for what you want. I think starting off in your career, obviously, the first few months is a lot of learning. So don't take too much on either. But when you feel like you know what you're doing, don't be afraid to ask your supervisor or manager to get on an extra project or to see if you can help train someone. I've only been here 6 months and I've already trained two of our new hires. And this year I'm going to be working on a project within my team. So don't ever feel like you can't ask your supervisor or your manager to do something extra just because you're new, I think would be my biggest piece of advice.
And you were interning for them prior to the pandemic hitting too, right? So you had a little bit of your foot in the door before it all went virtual. What's the biggest change for you that happened when you went from, an internship into a full-time role?
I think internship to full time, people always said it was so different, but I was like, there's no way. I've interned with them all summer and I did a year-long co-op, but it's very different. Obviously, the responsibility changes a lot, right? I mainly worked on projects during my internship and co-op just because they knew I was in school, so they weren't going to give me tasks that need to be done every day. They let me work on a project that I could get done within the 6 months that I was there. So I worked on my own time or worked on my own pace, but now that I'm on full time, obviously, like I have customers that I have to respond to, and it's a lot more responsibility, a lot more meetings, I would say. I'm always in a meeting now. But I think that's the biggest difference is you're going to have a real role. Most companies during an internship, you're really just working on a project. It's 3 months. How much can you really do in 3 months? So I think going into full time, the biggest difference has just been the workload. And now I have a bigger responsibility within the company. But I think it's a really good feeling. If I didn't, I would be like, why am I working full time here if I'm not making an impact or doing much, right? So I hope everyone feels like that.
Of course. And so were you always interested in specifically like this company and this industry, or were you kind of looking for other avenues while you were in college? Like what made you land here?
Obviously, as every student, you recruit many places. You shouldn't just tie yourself to one company, I would say, when you're recruiting, because why would you do that if the company is looking at 600 students, right? You're not the only candidate. So everyone would tell me that. And I would give that same advice to everyone. But for me, I really wanted to work at LyondellBasell. That was my number one. I always tell students make a priority list of the top 5 companies that you would love to work at and kind of rank it and put why, right? Because you can't just say, I want to work at LyondellBasell. Why do you want to work there? So for me, it was the people. Anytime I talked to anyone from there, they were just so caring and they really wanted to like get to know me. Even before they looked at my resume, they wanted to know who I was as a person, what interests me. So I really appreciated that, the connection they made. And so I just knew that you spend more time at work than you do at home or working. And I guess now you're at home, but before that, you're always in the office, right? And even when I'm at home, honestly, I spend a majority of my day talking to my coworkers or I'm working, like I'm not hanging out with my friends or with my family. It was really important for me to basically work at a company that I felt valued and cared about as a human being, and I wasn't just another number to them. So I really found that at LyondellBasell. So that's why I wanted to work there. And I honestly never really wanted to work in the typical oil and gas companies. The chemical industry actually always interested me. So that's why I picked the company. I would say mainly the people, and then the work. I enjoy the plastic and chemical industry a little bit more than I do oil and gas. So those were my two biggest reasons.
I think Lyondell does such a great job, like you say. When you were recruiting, that's something that stood out to you, that Lyondell always, people cared. You felt like they showed interest in not just you for a candidate, but like who you actually were, like what your personal interests were. And I feel like anyone that I've met that works at Lyondell, they've been very kind, and it makes you want to work there. Like you said, it's the
Yeah,
people you're
and
spending so
And
much
I
of your
will say, like, that culture carries on in the workplace. And even virtually right now, like my coworkers, I remember when I first started, they're always calling me and making sure I was okay. And I've never met them in person, right? But just that extra mile that everyone goes there, like during my co-op, if I ever needed a day off for a test, without a question, they would give it to me. I
time.
took my summers off. I took my winter break, which I know in college is like a month. I took that whole month off. They really care about you and what you want to prioritize, which I loved. And I think that's how I built such a good relationship with everyone in the company, right? Because as much as they cared about me, I also cared about them. So it kind of creates like that family like culture, which is really nice.
That's so important. So I also think that your story is interesting because you had the opportunity to have a summer internship and then transition over to a co-op. And I think that is something that we all aspire, especially when we love a company, we want to continue working for them, not just for the summer. So I'm wondering, how did you get that opportunity? Was it something that you did? Because I know not everyone that interns at Lyondell gets the opportunity to co-op. So I'm wondering if you could give our listeners and us as well some insight into how to take an internship and turn it into a co-op.
Yeah, so I know a lot of companies don't do co-ops, or you hear stories like they didn't give me a co-op and maybe they give it to someone else and stuff like that. I think the best thing to do is when you're in your internship, just focus on your internship. Don't stress about getting a full-time or a co-op. Just go to work every day focused and get the task done that you were asked for and beyond that, right? Asked to do different things, asked to do more. And all of that shows. Like, if I'm being honest, I never once asked for a co-op. I really just went to work every day excited, ready to network, put my best foot first, and did the project that they gave me and also asked to do more.
Mm.
And I guess during the middle of my internship, obviously I have check-ins with different people. One of my managers had asked if I would be interested in doing a co-op, and if I'm being honest, I did not want to do a co-op. I was very like, I've worked part-time in work, and then when I became an officer in SPO, actually stopped working. I gave like SPO my all. And I was like, I'm gonna be taking senior level classes. If I do this co-op at LyondellBasell and being president, I was thinking to myself, I was like, I don't think I can do that.
Mm.
So obviously the first time they broached me about the co-op, I didn't say all that. I was like, okay, I'll think about it. And then I remember talking to Dr. Wayhan, and he was like, no, Aram, like, don't turn it down. Talk to your manager, voice your concerns, but this is an opportunity that will help you grow. And he gave me honest feedback. I always think it's interesting. I think people go in saying that they want to do a co-op and they want it full time, but do you really want it? Or do you just want it for your resume, right? And I get it. You're a student, you want to build your resume, but you also have to think about if you actually want it, because if you don't, then you're not going to do a good job when you do get the role. So then I talked to my supervisor and I voiced my concerns to him about being president, because LyondellBasell is very involved in SPO, so they know what it takes to make the organization run and the classes I was taking. And, he told me that they would be flexible with me if I needed to work less than 20 hours or if I needed to take a day off. Those were options. So after hearing all of that and how they would work with my schedule, I actually ended up accepting the co-op. And as Dr. Wayhan said, it was a great experience. I learned a lot. I got to network even more. But that's kind of how I went about my co-op. I know a lot of students are the other way. They're really like, the second I get my internship, I'm just going to stress about a co-op. For me, I think that your work shows, right? If you're doing a good job and you're really focusing on your internship, which is what you got, and that's why they have asked you to come and to do that project, then your work will speak for itself. The rest of it will just fall in place, in my opinion.
Of course, I think it's important for you to mention that, especially that, it's good to plan ahead and it's good to have that goal, but at the same time, enjoy the moment and really focus on the task at hand, because if you're looking too far ahead, then you might trip up where you're currently standing. So while you were managing all of those different responsibilities, was there anything in particular that kind of helped you multitask all of that? Were there any resources that you used, any people that you reached out to make sure, like I'm staying on the right track?
Yeah, so I think obviously as like majority of the University of Houston students are, they're taking classes, they're working, they're probably also in an organization just to kind of get that leadership experience. So it's not rare for us. And so kind of the tips that I did was I loved my Google Calendar. I had everything blocked on there, whether it's like driving to a place to go get something that was blocked on my calendar. So I think being organized is the best tip and kind of like having a schedule for yourself, blocking out study time. Honestly, I would even block out like time to watch Netflix because you need a break, right? But I think just having that structure within your day and your week, just because like so many things are up in the air, like especially being an officer or being a member in an organization, you have like events on different days. And so I think just keeping all of that organized is really important when you have a lot going on. As far as like people and resources, I think obviously I would reach out to Dr. Wayhan just because him and I kind of have that relationship. So I think finding someone that you have that relationship with to kind of check in on yourself, like, am I doing the right thing? Or, hey, I'm working on this project at work. How do you think I can kind of go about this to be better? Or do you think my mindset is even making sense for this work project? So I think it is important to always have someone you can talk to, whether it could be a parent, honestly, a friend, professor, anyone, but kind of just to check in and be like, this is what's going on. I feel really overwhelmed. Like, what can I do? Just being able to kind of like talk through what's going on in your life is really helpful as well. Especially with COVID right now, I think all of y'all being students who are doing everything at home and online, I can imagine it probably gets a lot for you guys. So I think having that person to kind of talk to, it could even be an officer, is probably really helpful to just like mentally check in and make sure that you're still on track for the goals that you want to achieve.
Of course. And one thing that we actually implemented last semester was a family program to introduce more of that social feel into SPO since we're not in person. So it's a good sounding board for a lot of our members who are new or even some of our more veteran members to really be able to take on added responsibility and say, hey, I've been through where you were, so let me show you the way a little bit.
Yeah, because you need that, honestly. Like, I even remember just like, how do you apply to a career mixer? Like, simple things like that, or like, should I apply to all their career mixers or just this one, right? There's so many questions and so many things that don't make sense in the beginning. And so I think having someone to kind of lean on is really nice. And I really think what y'all implemented is a great idea because I think everyone needs a person, whether you're a freshman, sophomore, senior. And I'm glad you guys kind of came up to give that space to your members. I think that speaks a lot on the organization.
And to kind of transition that back into the org, one of our main focuses, obviously, at Bauer SPO is to prepare our members for internships and co-ops especially. And I know that you had a little bit of that taste when you had graduated in May, but do you have any advice for our members on how they can stand out in their resume or stand out in an interview?
I think it's really important to do your prep work. And what I mean by that is get your resume checked, not just once, like 10, 15 different times. Make sure it's a great resume, right? And go to resume workshop. Practice your interview skills, right? So what I would do is I would take the sheet that Bauer SPO provides for a mock interview. I would take that. I would Google more interview questions. I would answer each of the questions like in the Word document using a STAR method. Obviously, not like with sentences, but just to give myself an overview on how I would answer the question. And I would save that on my laptop and I would reference it and kind of just like walk through it maybe every week to kind of like refresh my brain. And then before interviews, I would have someone in my family or a friend kind of run through the interview with me to make myself feel comfortable. And I know some people don't like doing that with their friends or family. So another thing that I would do was when I would commute to school, I would just talk to myself in the car. Or like if you're in the shower, right, you can just kind of ask yourself one of the interview questions and just walk through it in your head, make yourself more comfortable with answering the question. I'm not saying rehearse it. And everyone's different. Actually, some people do better without practicing. For me, I did a lot better with practice. So it's however you work, but I think being able to answer a question really well and hit all of the talking points that you need to is really important in an interview because I'll tell you that the person sitting on the other side has a sheet of paper and they're writing down everything you say. So if you miss the task or the result, they'll ask you to go back. So if you can hit each one, it shows that you took the time to prepare, right? And that just speaks on you care about the company, you care about the role. So I think interview wise, that's probably the best way to practice. That's what I did. And then before a career fair, do your research. We all have access to Google. We all should be able to know what a company is doing based on LinkedIn, based on their website. So know what the company does, know what's important to them. Each company has their own values, whether it's safety, whether it's, anything else, maybe something that they're doing during COVID that you can bring up during career fair. That stands out. If I'm talking to 100 students and one person comes up to me and is like, I saw LyondellBasell was on the Fortune 500 for world's most admired companies, which we were last week. And you did the time to research that, which probably is like just the first thing on our LinkedIn page right now. That speaks volumes because the other 90 students didn't mention that. So it shows me that you care about the company that you are talking to right now. So what I would do before career fair is write down all the companies that I was going to talk to that day, a few facts about them, and then something that was popular going on at the company right now, whether it was a project, something new that they were implementing, or anything that I found interesting about the company. And then when I was having the conversation with them, I would ask them, like, oh, I saw this. I saw you guys were working on this new project. How did it affect your supply chain? Or how did it affect you? Or what do you think about the project, right? Rather than just ask them a generic question, right? This shows that you took the time to do the research and now you're asking them about it. It just helps you stand out. And I think something that students need to realize is, you're competing with so many people. We all have similar resumes. We're all taking the same classes. We all go to the same school. So what can make you stand out? So even just a simple LinkedIn search can make you stand out. So I think doing that for career fair is really important. Then I think the last thing I would always do is follow up. So at the end of your conversation, always ask, hey, can I add you on LinkedIn? Do you mind if I connect with you? Or do you have your email on you so I can send you a follow-up email with my resume and some of the talking points we talked about? And honestly, if they're a recruiter, they're going to say yes. If you're a recruiter, your LinkedIn is there for the people that you talk to that day. So most of the times they'll say yes. And so go home that night or the next morning and type up something. I always tell people don't send it right away. Wait an hour, read through it again, then send it. And honestly, it's actually really surprising as a recruiter. I would say everyone asks me for my LinkedIn. How many people actually message me? Not as many as you would think, right? So if you're that person that took the time to send the message, you'll stand out. So those are ways that I stood out and tried to go the extra mile. And I think if people can find ways that they can stand out or even implement these, they do work. Yeah.
These are all really good points, especially. And one of the things I think a lot of our members need a little bit more assistance with, which I'm hoping we can bring to them in a future workshop, is the do's and don'ts of networking. So you kind of touched on a few of those points, especially with, following up. But what are some other ways, and like, how would you go about networking to recruit for a job or ask for advice?
Yeah. I think the first thing is always be professional. Don't add anyone on LinkedIn that you've never talked to before. I think a lot of students make that mistake. Hey, my friend talked to you at the career fair and I just added you. Like a, a recruiter's not going to take that very well, right? You want to be professional in everything you do. And at the same time, like most of these recruiters were students, right? So if someone adds me on LinkedIn and I haven't met them, I honestly don't mind too much because I understand how it was to be a student. So kind of know who you're talking to, right? If you are talking to a senior executive and you're just messaging them on LinkedIn, that's probably not the best thing to do. But I think do's and don'ts are interesting. I agree. I think that would be an interesting workshop. I think overall, the do is just be professional. If you think anything that does cross the line, just do not do it. Even if you think it could maybe cross a line or rub someone the wrong way or be unprofessional, just avoid it at all cost, right? Because the second you do something like that, unfortunately, the alumni community is pretty small, the oil and gas community is pretty small. Things start spreading. And I would hate for someone who thought that they were just doing something because they wanted to get a job, it turned out to go the wrong way. So I would just always say my biggest do is be 110% professional. Anything that goes below the 110 is a do not for me, just across the board, honestly. And I think if you can always keep that level of professionalism, then you won't have to worry about the do nots. And it's interesting right now because with social media, there's a lot of do nots, right? Like adding someone on Facebook or Instagram that is a recruiter and stuff like that, which I think kind of gets crossed over in the younger generations because we use Instagram, Facebook, Twitter way more than we use LinkedIn, right? Keeping up with LinkedIn is actually so much harder for us, but you should just always have to remember who you're speaking to and just always stay professional, I think is my biggest advice.
I think that's really good advice because, we are in a virtual environment. And so we have to be creative and get to know or meet recruiters in different ways.
Yeah, that's
But
true.
it's also really important to keep it professional. I know for myself, I was close to messaging a recruiter on Instagram because I found their personal Instagram.
Yeah.
But I asked around because, like you said, if you're not sure, then you're better off not doing it. And so I think that's great advice. Always make sure that you're being professional. And if you're questioning whether it is or it isn't, then maybe don't do it and wait and
Yeah,
ask someone else that give you
I
some advice.
agree. To speak on that a little bit too is if you don't know, just wait an hour, right? Think about it, sleep on it. And I always tell people that with emails too. I'm like, read your email an hour later and see if it still is what you want to send, right? Same thing with recruiting or a LinkedIn message or an email or adding someone. An hour is not going to make a difference in whether you get a job or not, honestly. So just wait that hour, see if you still think it's professional. And if it is, then go ahead with it, right? You can't ask everyone after every decision you've ever made. So if you think sending that LinkedIn message is a good idea, then just send it. If not, then just backspace it out and you were never going to send that, right? But it is hard right now, honestly, with everything being virtual. I know y'all are like in a whole different ball game and I think recruiters understand that though. They really do understand that it's much harder. It's something that you guys are learning while you're recruiting. There's no guidebook on how to recruit virtually, right? No one's ever done it before. But at the same time, just keep in mind that recruiters haven't done it before either. So you guys are kind of at the same playing field when it comes to COVID recruiting.
Mhm.
We were asking around and we're just like, all right, what do y'all want to hear about? And honestly, like
Yeah.
networking was the biggest thing. And like you said, we are all in the same playing field. This is all new territory for everyone. So we're all kind of learning as we go. And there's been a lot of learning curves.
Yeah, and I think recruiting virtually, it's different, yes, but also you can imply everything that I just said virtually. Practice does not go away,
Mhm.
research does not go away. Being confident, sitting professionally, making sure everything is nice and clean behind you, sending follow-up emails. Those things don't go away. Yes, maybe the human interaction goes away a little bit, but if you really liked a recruiter and you got along with them really well at career fair, I don't think it's a bad idea to set up a follow-up Zoom meeting maybe with them and say, hey, I want to learn a little bit about your role, then a little bit more about the company. Can I set up a 10 to 15-minute Zoom call with you? That way I can just learn more about what you do at the company, right? And that's a post-career fair thing. So I think you guys can still be creative with getting out there and kind of putting yourself forward, but it's different. It is different.
Mhm.
You have to expand the creativity box a little bit more than that definitely we had to when we were recruiting.
Yeah, no, I think the insight and the tips that you gave, those are extremely important, especially for kids that are just starting it, like getting into the program. I remember when I went to my first career fair, I know what I was doing, and if I had heard this
Oh my God.
podcast, then
That
I would
was
have,
rough.
yeah, it would have increased my chances knowing, knowing what to talk about, giving them some facts that, I've even, you can hit a recruiter and they won't even know what you're talking about because that's how up to date you are. And so
Yeah.
if you do that, that's definitely going to leave a great impression.
Yeah, and I remember my friend, obviously advice comes from different people. So like the research advice came from one of my friends and she was like, it was so interesting because once I went up to a recruiter and I was like, "Oh, I see you guys are working on this project." And she showed a lot of passion about it and the recruiter was like, "Actually, I didn't even know we were doing that, right?" So he was like, "Give me your email. Like I'm going to look into it and I want to follow up with you and be able to answer your questions." He followed up with her and they talked more about the project and her summer internship actually was on that project.
That's
So
awesome.
you would be surprised that small things go a long way. And I don't think that mentality changes just because it's virtual.
Yeah, that's really good. So everyone listening, make sure you get those good facts and informations for the career fair. Something else that our listeners are very interested in, and I was actually talking to Christy, another officer on the team. She was telling me that she had the opportunity when she was a freshman. She didn't know anything. She was on your team for a Schlumberger case competition. And every time we talk about it, she's like, yeah, Erin was so amazing. She led our team. We won first place. So I think that's amazing. And I am interested to learn more about your experience with case competitions. And if you could give our listeners some kind of tips and lessons now that you have 2020 hindsight vision.
Yeah, case competitions. They give me a little bit of PTSD, honestly, but I will say that I learned more from a case competition than I did in some classes, honestly. I think you really learn a lot working with the company, working with the team. And it's very similar to something that you could probably be doing during your summer internship, right? So I would say that anytime you have the opportunity to work on a case competition and you have the time in your schedule, sign up. I think I was doing that one with Christy when I was an officer and working. So at the time, I probably didn't think I had that much time, but I don't regret signing up. It was a great learning lesson. I think some tips for case competitions are always try to help, right? I think it's interesting because in case competitions, you'll always have a team lead and then you'll have like one or two other people that do like a majority of the work. And then there's always like a few stragglers who don't do that much. And they know that someone else is carrying the team. But I think when you work on a case competition, just remember that it's your reputation. If someone's seeing that you're not putting any effort, that can carry on and they might be working for a company one day and they might get asked, "Hey, should we recommend that person?" And the only memory you have of them is that one time that they didn't help you on the case competition and you just had to carry the team because they did not want to help, right? So just remember that you're working on a project with a group of people that are all going to be working at different companies one day. Like, what memory of you do you want of them, right? Do you want someone who is like, yes, that person was such a great team player? They might have been a freshman or not even a freshman. If it's a class case competition, they might actually have been honest and said, hey, I've never done this before. I actually don't know what to do. I don't know how to clean up this Excel sheet, but they wanted to learn. They watched YouTube videos, they tried. That speaks more on the person who just doesn't respond in their case competition group chat for like weeks on and everyone has to do the work without them. So just remember that like your name is going to get carried on and your name is on that project. So the work that you put in reflects on you as well. And just try, honestly, case competitions are really confusing the first few times you do them. I remember I didn't really even know how to like do a spend analysis and those things, right? Because the first time I did a case competition, I hadn't taken some of my classes yet, but I had a team lead who did, and I sat with her and she showed me how she did everything and what I could do. And she showed me YouTube videos that she watched to learn things. So I think as long as you're putting in the effort, that speaks volumes. I think that's like my biggest advice is just try hard. You don't want to leave your team lead doing everything for you because trust me, it's not fun. And case competitions are the real world. Like that's what you're going to be doing in your summer internship. So it's a good learning experience and it teaches you more than anything will. Working with a group of students to get something done and then doing a presentation at the end of it will really help you grow. Kind of how I speak on Bauer SPO, like that helped me grow. I would say the next biggest thing was a case competition. It taught me so much that was so invaluable. But as far as advice, I think everyone started off with their first case competition not knowing what to do, but
Mm-hmm.
the people that became team leads in Dr. Wayhan's class or won first place took the extra mile to learn, and that's why they got where they were. So I think just take the extra mile, and no one knew how to do a spend analysis or even put a presentation deck together, but they learned, and that's how they were team leads and that's how they won first or second place. So just do those things and I think you'll be fine in a case competition.
I think it's great advice. You say, just try and ask questions because,
Yeah.
like you said, we've all done our first and our second and our third. And even at that point, we were still kind of in the dark at times with respect to what was going on. But it is something that is going to be present when we go into our internships and co-ops and then jobs. So it's important, if you don't know what to do, if you don't know where to start, ask questions because someone will have an answer for you. And it just shows that you are taking the initiative to understand what's going on and be helpful.
Yeah, asking questions during a case competition is critical. Like I used to always tell like my team, everyone just constant ask questions because when you go in front of the judges, they ask so many questions. So if your whole team doesn't know the answer, then it looks bad. It shows that only one person did all this work because why can't everyone answer it? So I remember like anytime I worked on a case competition, I would like sometimes we would even record. If someone was missing that meeting, I would record the meeting and send it to them and tell them to listen to the meeting, because I would just have my team, like all of us would just constantly ask each other questions. Or I would have like one person explain one thing and then other people ask questions, because I'm like, when you get in front of the judges and you can't answer a question, or they ask one person the question and then also the next person a question, you guys both answer differently, it shows that we're not a team. And that's what divides people during the judging portion of the case competition. So asking questions is critical.
Yeah, that's so good. I think you gave really good points. So to kind of summarize it, take advantage of the people you're working with, because you want to leave a good impression, because we're all going to be working for companies one day. And if you ever in need, someone could really hook you up and, make sure you leave a good impression. And then two is, like Elle was saying, work hard. Nobody really knows what's going on. And so it's okay to feel that way, but what are you going to do with that? Are you going to, work hard and use the resources around you, alumni, or people that have already taken the class, or even YouTube, how to analyze spend. And so I think that's really good and practical and real advice. So thank you.
Yeah, and I actually hosted the first virtual case competition for Dr. Wayhan's class, because I was working at LyondellBasell. It was during my co-op when his class did their case competitions, and it was either we cancel it or we do the case competition, right? And I was like, I think we can do this virtually. So I was able to host it virtually, but I think virtually case competitions are a little bit different in the sense that, you are sharing your screen and all of that. So I think it's a little bit easier virtually because you have your screen right in front of you, and maybe you don't have to memorize everything so much. But that being said, when you are doing a virtual case competition, just make sure you're not reading off the slide deck, right? Like, still speak to the judges, right? You can make eye contact, you can use gestures. And also, I would say is just practice the technology portion of it, like transitioning from slide decks. And I think you guys know this because you guys host so many events for Bauer SPO, but I think students who maybe haven't done that type of stuff and are going to be doing virtual case competitions this semester, just make sure that you practice the technology aspect of it a lot, because you can have really good content, but then if there's like a huge glitch or someone doesn't know where the slide went, then the judges are kind of sitting there. It kind of takes away from what you were trying to say. So I would say virtually just practice that. And I think other than that, case competitions are pretty similar still.
So thank you for that advice with respect to case competitions. And kind of going off of that especially, is there anything that you wish you would have done differently while you were in university?
Yeah, so I think the only thing, like looking back at it now, that I wish I did differently was, so I was president for a year of SPO, right? And then after that, I had another semester on campus. But at SPO, you can't be president for more than 2 terms. So I was done with being in the organization. And beyond that, I wanted to give someone else kind of the spot to be a leader. That's the only way you'll grow, right? Is if they have the opportunity. But I think that last semester, I didn't really get involved in like still going to SPO events, right? I was kind of like, oh, I've already done that. I even hosted a lot of them, and I don't really feel the need to keep recruiting and networking. Like, I kind of felt like at that point I knew everyone, but I kind of regret that, because I think that you truly never know everyone, right? And you can always learn something from the SPO events. Going back, I wish that I still attended them that semester. But at that point, I was like, I'm just so tired. Like, I want to sleep a little bit, or like, I want to like do the things that I wasn't able to when I was at the events. Like, even if it was like go to like a happy hour with my friends or like go grab dinner. So I kind of started prioritizing those things a little bit more. But I do wish that I still stayed really connected with the org, because every event you go to, you learn something, no matter if you've hosted that event before or attended for 3 semesters in a row. Each single event will teach you at least one thing, and that one thing will help you for the rest of your life. So I think that's one thing. And also getting involved in other orgs. Like, I love Bauer SPO. It changed my whole life. But at the same time, I wish I still did another org. I think it's a good way to meet people that are outside of supply chain. Like, now when I look at it, I'm like, all my friends are in supply chain. So I think if I did maybe another organization, and it didn't have to be Bauer. There's so many orgs just inside the University of Houston, and a lot of them work with like nonprofits and stuff like that. So if you have the time and you're already super involved in SPO, but you want to do something else, find another org. There's so many orgs on campus. And I think if I had kind of taken a step back from Bauer, I would have met so many people just within the college campus. So I think those were my two biggest takeaways: is you never know enough in Bauer SPO, no matter if you're an officer or a president or even Dr. Wayhan, I swear he's probably still learning stuff. So don't ever feel like you've capped out on your knowledge in the org. And second is there's a whole world out there outside of Bauer. Take advantage of it. Like, yes, we're in the business school, but there's so many other departments within University of Houston that can kind of help you grow. Like I know a lot of people were a part of the Energy Coalition and stuff like that, and they found really good jobs after that, and they just got to meet really awesome people. So I think never feel like you're done growing, I guess, is the biggest takeaway from both of those things.
That's awesome advice. And it just kind of feeds back into something that Dr. Wayhan and Dr. Miller all tell us, which is continuous improvement and continuous development is something that will go on with you throughout college, but start those habits now. Because even if it's something that is completely outside of your major and it's just something that you're interested in, like you said, you'll meet amazing people, you'll learn something amazing from it, and you'll have a great experience. And maybe it could turn into a job, or maybe it's just something, to the side, which is great.
Yeah, you kind of learn something about yourself probably. What I notice is in SPO is a lot of people get that full-time job and then they just back away. And the full-time job is not going to start the second you sign, right? You have probably a whole semester, a whole year ahead of you, but that doesn't mean that you're done growing just because you've signed that full-time offer. I've noticed a lot of members, a lot of officers, me myself, right? I signed my offer, and if I wasn't president that semester, I probably might have stopped going to things because I think a lot of people just view Bauer SPO as a place to get a job, but it's so much more than that. It's just a place to network and meet friends and just learn, right? Every single workshop you go to, you'll learn something. So don't just stop growing because you've got that internship or you got that full-time job. Don't make that your stopping point because as a human and as a person, you have so much more to grow than just beyond that.
Of course. Is there actually anything right now that you're working on outside of work that you're passionate about?
Let's see. I don't know how much you guys know about SPO Central, but other than that, I'm not working on too much. We're trying to expand SPO Central. So right now I'm working on that and kind of being able to host workshops for our alumni. So that's kind of like the side thing that I'm doing right now. But I think my big focus is kind of how can I build on my resume and maybe attend workshops or better my Excel skills. So I think my biggest Q1 goal was to sign up for like a Excel class because I feel like since I don't even know what that class is called now, junior year with
40/30.
yeah, after that I feel like I haven't like brushed up on my Excel skills. So I think like kind of just always think about process improvement, but process improvement internally. Like how can you better yourself? Because if you want to get that promotion or if you want to better a project within your company, you have to bring skills in. And they've already hired you, yes, but if I want to get the next promotion or if I want to ask my manager to be on a big project, I have to be able to offer something to the table. And something that I lack, I feel like, are my Excel skills. So, like signing up for a workshop that can make me brush up on those skills or better myself, or kind of the vision is that I'm going in right now. But I feel like post college is really hard to remind yourself that you need to still sign up for things and do things because in college it was so easy. Like you would just like walk into an event and like everything was just like organized for you, right? Obviously it took a whole team, but everything was just nice and done. They had a presenter there, you got to learn your information and go home. But post college it's not like that. You actually have to like search and Google and find a workshop, probably pay for the workshop. And it takes so many steps now. So don't take it for granted, you guys who are attending these Bauer SPO events. It's a lot of work. But
Can
yeah.
you expand a little bit upon SPO Central because it is
Yeah.
something that a lot of people don't know about, but people can start to look forward. SPO is not just an undergraduate thing; it's a little more now. So, can you expand on some of
Yeah.
the things that you guys are working on?
Yeah. So basically what SPO Central is SPO Central is like the hub and then it has branches. One of the branches is Bauer SPO. We hope one day to move SPO to different college campuses, which would be the other branches. But our biggest goal is to basically provide a tool of supply chain knowledge to all supply chain majors. So whether you're an undergrad level or post undergrad, you don't have to go to the University of Houston. This is open to anyone. But that's kind of our mission and vision. And then, kind of what I work on is being able to offer workshops to our junior executives So, for example, a lot of our quote unquote alumni, or even people that I work at with LyondellBasell who went to UT&M, they did have the opportunity to do events like the Humphrey Group or the watershed workshops that we kind of did in through EEP, right? EEP is fairly new, which I think a lot of people always forget, right? A lot of our alumni did not get to be a part of EEP. And also, EEP is handpicked by Dr. Wayhan, and the executive council kind of pays for it. So, not every student gets to be a part of it. So, this junior executive platform will kind of give the opportunity to anyone and everyone, whether what school you went to or what major you were in, to kind of better your skills by attending workshops like executive presence, taking the stage, how to be a better leader, how to negotiate better. And you can sign up for these workshops, attend them. Personally, I've taken them. I don't know if you guys have completed your EEP certificate yet, but they are really good workshops. The presenters are great, and I still reference my notes from them. So they are something that really will better your skills and something you can add to your resume. So that's kind of the branch of SPO Central that I work on, is the junior executive branch. But do you have any questions? I don't know if that was clear.
No, yeah, that was really great. I just
Okay,
think it's
awesome.
important for people to get excited for what SPO is up to and know that
Yeah.
we're not just a organization inside of Bauer. We're actually up to some really great and big things that you can continue to keep in touch with SPO, because they're going to be offering more workshops, more opportunities to develop yourself personally and professionally. And so I just wanted everyone to know that and,
Yeah.
get excited for the future.
No, I'm glad you brought that up. And I think it kind of touches back on like what Elle was asking me, like, oh, so how are you? What are you doing now to kind of better yourself? And I kind of told you guys, like, it's hard. I don't know where to go to kind of attend these workshops. Like in college, I would just like attend all the Bauer SPO events, or like I would sign up to be an AEP and I would just go to the events, and I felt like I was learning so much constantly. Where right now I'm like, where do I go to learn anything? And right now I'm an alumni, so I don't have access to what I did in college. I think this kind of will help bridge the gap for alumni or junior executives who went to any school who still want to learn and grow and better themselves, to attend these workshops that we are hosting, to do that, to be a better leader, to make their presence known within corporate America. So I just think it's interesting that kind of what I just spoke about kind of bridges that gap. And I hope it bridges that gap for other junior executives that are kind of feeling like I am, right? Like, how now do I better myself? Like, where, what website do I go to sign up for a workshop? Like, I can't just walk into one like I used to in college. So I'm hoping with this being launched this semester, it kind of gives junior executives some way to kind of better themselves and keep growing their resume.
Yeah, that's really good. And so, everyone attending Bauer SPO right now, you're very privileged, because SPO is working very hard to improve you and get the most out of your college career. And so, wrapping up the podcast, thank you so much, Aram. We have our final question that we like to ask all of our guests, and that is, do you live by any piece of advice or motto?
Yeah, so I think I gave so many different like tidbits of advice throughout this whole segment, which it's so hard not to, right? Because in every question you're like, oh, this is the advice I have from college, or this is how I would have done it. But I think beyond just college, and I think this is kind of what I live with, is just always put my best foot forward. I think I spoke a lot on that kind of throughout each thing that I touched on, but whether it's an email that you're sending or a presentation you're working on or hosting something, your name is on it and your name represents you. So always give it your all, because your reputation follows you for a while. So I always think it's so important to always put I spoke on this earlier, but 110% in everything you do. I think whether it's an email or even turning in a homework assignment, right? Your name is on that. So just give it your all. And I know sometimes it can be hard. It can kind of be draining to just always be putting your best foot forward, but just mentally take a break then, and then go back to it when you can regroup and know that, hey, my name is on this. My signature is at this end of this email. If it's not done well, then that represents me, or this Excel sheet that I'm about to send out to my team for this case competition shows the work that I put into it. So I think just with everything you do, just remember that your name is attached to it, and your name is your reputation, especially post college, especially in the Houston bubble, the industry we live in, right? So I think that would be my advice that I live with.
Well, thank you so much, Aram. And to wrap things up, where can our members and listeners connect with you online?
Yeah, you guys can find me on LinkedIn. Feel free to shoot me a message, even if I haven't met you before. And if you want to set up some time to talk, or if you have any questions about anything that I spoke about during this podcast, or anything about kind of my history at LyondellBasell, or even my officer positions at Bauer SPO, you can just shoot me a message. We can set up some time to talk. But yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, and I wish everyone the best of luck. And as I said, if you need anything, I'm a resource for you guys. So thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you so much, Erum, for coming out and speaking with us. And that wraps up another episode of SPO Coffee Chats. Thank you all, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Woo!